Lifestyle.
Culture.
Photography. Fresh Eye. Lifestyle.
Culture.
Photography.
This edition is an interview with Britpop artist Charlie Edwards, aka Pure Evil. I caught up with him and asked him about his journey as an artist and his 2020 lockdown experience. Right, welcome. So Charlie, this is an honour. I did meet you about 4 years ago now. I worked this out, it was about 4 years ago, and when I was working in the area of East London at that time, for EMAP in publishing. And so I was, trawling the streets at lunchtime, saw your gallery, went in, as I'm sure many people do. And then we met, as I said to you before, you're instantly engaging. I'd seen you on TV. I'd seen you on TV before, probably about the year before. You'd been getting some exposure on television and gaining some traction for good reason, because the work is just incredible. And I've always had an interest in graffiti and pop art. As long as I can remember, probably from about the age of 14. And believe it or not, I'm 54 now.
Oh, so, yeah.
And anyway, we had a conversation, and I bought some of your work, told everybody about you. A good friend of mine bought some of your work again, and here we are, like 4 years later, and you popped into my mind at a time, 2020, which is a year clearly that nobody is ever going to forget. It feels like the apocalypse.
Yeah, I know, it's bizarre. I think it's changed. I think there is this idea of the apocalypse where it's going to be the four riders riding in, but the apocalypse is just an event that changes the way that we do everything. And I think that's completely happened. I'm no longer waking up, getting onto the train, commuting into London, spending, my day there, and then coming back and wishing I was spending more time back home in the countryside. Now I'm getting up, I'm going straight to my artist studio, and I'm making art here. But because we can do things like this, because I can take photographs of artwork that I've made in the morning, put it onto the website and upload it and, sell it that way. It's kind of changed the way that we can all do things. Whereas we're not just sitting at home kind of paralyzed. We've had to sort of work out new ways of doing things.
Yeah. So which county are you in? I'm interested.
We're in Hertfordshire. So we're like 40 minutes. I get from Old Street. The plan was every single day to get on the train from Hertford and then travel down to Old Street in 40 minutes. But the idea now is sitting on that train where you get to a certain point and you're, face to face, shoulder to shoulder with other people on the train is just not appealing.
So your nearest...
What I know now... Sorry?
Your nearest station is Hertford?
Yeah, Hertford's the nearest station.
Oh, okay.
So a few miles there.
Right. I'm Bishop Stortford.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And formerly St Albans, so it's all about Hertfordshire right now.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, like when I spoke to you earlier on, we were sitting in a hide looking out for waterfalls, and so being able to spend, you know, doing a solid amount of work, but then having a break and going and looking at nature is, you know, it's really the medicine that you need. You know, you don't need antidepressant. You just need a good walk in, you know, in the nature when you're dealing with stress. And obviously, if you're not spending that much time in London, you're dealing with a lot less stress. Like I remember living on Hackney Road, and there was a great bit of conversation that I overheard from two sort of youths who were walking up Hackney Road, and they said, one of them said to the other, "Does your face hurt from doing the screw face? When you're in that sort of area, in that neighbourhood, you have to look quite mean and quite tough." So, you know, these kids, when they're hanging out with their mums, they're all lovely and smiling, but when they're on Hackney Road, they've got to do the screw face and look kind of mean. But the thing is, they have like a sort of residual ache from having to do the screw face. And when I moved, you know, when I moved to the countryside and people were saying hello to you, you're not used to that on Hackney Road.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I will sell the British countryside to people all day long. When I was 16, I didn't imagine for a second that I'd be living outside London. And things change. You know, there is a world outside London, and it's a good one, a healthy one. It really is.
You can go in, you can do what you have to do, and then you can get out, and then you can just relax, and then you can actually have a garden. Yeah. And you don't have to have, you know, like I remember we didn't really have windows in the apartment on Hackney Road. We had neighbours upstairs who we didn't know. Yeah. You know, like, you know, Friday night, it would, you know, the party would start, and, you know, you weren't getting any sleep. So, you know, out here, we're just chilling. But now the whole kind of COVID pandemic suddenly started. I went back to my mum's to see her. And then when I finally got back here, I wasn't sure, will I be spending time in London? Will I not be? But it just didn't seem like an option that I wanted to pursue for a while. And so we've all had to kind of evolve. It's an evolutionary bottleneck. We've all had to sort of work it out. And I've got creative friends who have really flourished. And I've got creative friends who haven't found a way to kind of, you know, sort of do what they do, but we've all had to work out ways of doing things in a different way.
Right. So I want to introduce you to the audience here at Fresh Eye, about you and about your tag, your name, Pure Evil, and how that came about. We've had the conversation before, but tell the people about your handle.
Yeah. Well, it's a funny one, because one day I was on my sketchbook and I was just drawing and I was coming up with some different ideas. I read a book called Pictograph, and it was talking about character design, and I was interested in, you know, sort of working out my own character, kind of thinking about how Keith Haring had his, you know, he had sort of the crawling baby and he had his dog and he had various icons. And I wanted something that was really striking. There used to be a skateboard company called Insane that I used to do a bit of work for. And he had a very thick line kind of graphic style. Yeah. And so I also remember the inspiration being one of the, I think it was Barcelona Olympics. They had like a little character called Kobe that was very simple. It was very well drawn, you know, very well drawn. And it was, I wanted something that was a bit Keith Haring. I wanted something that was a bit Jed Wells Insane, and I wanted something that was a bit Kobe Olympics. And I drew this little character, and then I wrote the words Pure Evil next to it for some reason. And it reminded me that when I was a kid, I had some posh cousins who had shotguns, and I went out and shot a rabbit. And so I always felt guilty about this. And so as a way of kind of remembering this dead rabbit, I started drawing this character and obsessively drawing it whenever I was going out. Yeah. Not having to use a stencil, but being able to do something freehand. And I remember being on Charlotte Road, spray painting it, and a businessman walked past and he went, you're the guy who does that. I see that every day. It makes me laugh. And it went from just me in my head doing these things to realizing that there were other people who were aware of it as well.
Yeah.
And I guess it was, it was a kind of a study in creating an icon to the point where people start to recognize it. Where you see a Sony logo, or you see a BASF logo, or you see a IBM logo. So it was kind of my logo that I created. But it had a meaning to me. It had this sort of this memory of this terrible thing that I did in the past.
Yeah. I think what struck me when I first asked you about that was just how powerful and poignant a childhood memory is, and how that can transcend into adult life and obviously stay with you.
It goes deep. Something like that happens to you when you're a kid. You don't forget that.
Absolutely.
You may have like 8 or 10 things that happen to you, in the day in your adult life that you kind of brush off, because that's kind of how we deal with things. But that feeling of walking back to the house with this dead rabbit and seeing everyone's reaction, it stuck with me. It really did.
Yeah.
And so being able to later on kind of process it. But now if I'm in, I've been to, sort of Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia and left little bunny characters, or if I'm in Moscow, or if I'm in Sao Paulo, or if I'm in, Mexico City, I'll go out and leave these little characters as a kind of a reminder. So it is that thing of just leaving those memories and sort of spreading them around.
Yeah. So given the travel that you've done then, so can you reflect on maybe one of the most memorable destinations you've been to?
I feel blessed to be able to just, say, yeah, okay, cool, I'll go to Siem Reap. I feel like you've always wanted to go and visit the temples, but then you can also tie it into doing an exhibition. And, until the actual flight, remember when we used to jump on planes and fly places? It used to be so simple. It's like jumping on those planes and going to those places. And it used to kind of scare me arriving in a new city for the first time, but now I kind of love it, because you get there, you don't know where you are, you don't know where your hotel is, you don't know where the gallery is, you don't know where the places to paint are, but then you kind of build up a matrix of where you are and where the city is and how the city is. And usually when I go to a new city now, in the evenings I'll go running and I'll run through the city and kind of explore it in that way.
Yeah.
So being in a city like Siem Reap in Cambodia, but then being able to work and being able to explore and visit temples, and sort of, it's an artistic practice going on. I hate to use the word practice, because it's not a practice. Art is a thing that you do. But then there's also a kind of a spiritual practice where you get a chance, if you're in Mexico City, to visit Teotihuacan and visit the temples. Or if you're in Sri Lanka, you get to visit the temples. I'm sort of wherever I am now as a way of kind of, being able to meditate and stay calm. I'm always trying to find temples in that city. So that's part of the whole journey, is being able to explore and being able to travel. But then also I've been doing like workshops. If I do the exhibition on maybe a Thursday, on the Saturday, I'll do what I call a Pure Evil Drawing Club, where I'll do like I'll meet up with a bunch of kids and we'll hang out and eat sweets and draw. We'll have like a big table and we may draw our spirit animals, or, our favorite. Turn pizza into characters and stuff like that.
Fantastic. Can you give us your take on what lockdown has done for you, or maybe shown you, taught you? How are you working in lockdown?
It's been mad, because actually I'm surrounded in this room by keyboards and drum machines and a mixer. Yeah, I know, it looks like I'm in a strip club. I know, it may surprise you, but I don't know if I can... I'm basically, probably the first month of the whole lockdown, I was kind of stunned, but in the back of my mind, I knew from like the early 90s, I kind of amassed this whole collection of digital audio tapes.
Right.
And so I spent the first month, I'd get up in the morning, I'd have my coffee, I'd sit down and I'd dub all of these tapes from my little Sony DAC recorder onto the computer and onto the computer, and kind of built up a whole archive of music. I wasn't even thinking about making art at that time. So in the first month, I produced 2 albums and also like another compilation of older stuff that I did. I go running in the morning, which kind of settles my mind, because you kind of get into the zone. It's like being a mountain climber. You're climbing and you're not thinking about anything else. But when you're running, you kind of go into auto mode. So then you can go, okay, I can't go to the gallery. I've got 3 members of staff at home. I've got to handle, make sure they're okay and their wages are getting paid.
Yeah.
And then after the month, I kind of came out of the whole music thing. And then we developed an artist studio near to where we live. And so I would just walk over there and just start working. And it was beautiful because it was kind of like the early days of when I moved back to London from San Francisco, where I knew I wanted to do stencils and I had this sort of pure evil thing going.
Yeah.
And I had a little apartment in Shoreditch High Street, and I would spray paint on cardboard and I would put those pieces up and sell one for 50 quid and do one. And so it was like a nice sort of back to the essence and back to the core of what I was doing, which was, what materials do I have? Can I paint on? And can I make something out of it? And it was kind of beautiful because it was, you strip things down to the basics. I wanted that month to be able to catch up on all this music that I'd recorded back in the day. Yeah. But then once that was done, that was out of the way, my to-do list was ticked, then I could just get back to making art. Right. And now it's nice because I'm spending more time like painting with a brush. I'm spending more time drawing. I'm working on my lines. Yeah. Less time cutting stencils. And it's kind of terrifying because I was doing one canvas the other day and I finished it and kind of looked at it and went, oh my God, it's almost like I'm back being like an A-level student. Right. I can't fall back on cutting stencils and doing things in a graphic way. Yeah. It's just me and a tube of paint and a brush. So I've really got to sort of, evolve. And it is this sort of evolutionary bottleneck where I've got to get really good at painting really quick. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm screwed. I don't have my stencils. My stencils are all in London. So from this process, from this apocalypse that we've kind of gone through. Right. Sorry, we had a little bit of a lag there. This is I saw that. Something popped up. Yeah. So, I mean, it's very evident to me where your influences come from. They're coming from places that I have always loved in terms of art, be it, Andy Warhol, Lichtenstein, and just general kind of 80s born graphic style, hip hop inspired graffiti, all of that stuff. Who can you talk about just briefly in terms of a modern day contemporary artist that you like? I mean, I know because you represent other artists at the gallery, so who can you name? Yeah. I think one of the inspirations is definitely Space Invader, because he is prolific. Right. He's a double threat. He's going out on the street and he's producing iconic artwork, that is like a gift to the city. Yeah. And also very difficult to remove from the street and make, if you basically take a Space Invader piece off the street, you end up with a box of tiles. So it's a clever way of putting pieces up in the street. I did a show in Rome, and I know that when he was there, they were basically working with him. He would go out on his moped with his, the pieces that he made and a pole and some, no nails glue, and stick them up and place them in situ. So he's prolifically putting pieces up in the street, but then he also has, his studio work where he's making canvases you know, he's using these tiles, and he's sort of, if he does a piece in the street of a Pink Panther out of tiles, then he's doing a piece in the studio that is the selling piece. And the reason, you know, he's basically keeping his street pieces consistent, and he's always prolific, and he's always creating. So, you know, his sort of way of doing things is really impressive. I guess also Shepard Fairey is a big inspiration, because he's an iconic, you know, sort of artist who's, you know, created posters for Obama. I mean, listen, he's basically created images that have made American young people vote for Barack Obama because of his belief, you know, and that's pretty amazing. He's actually being able to go towards the, you know, the actual mainstream. You could show people the image, they won't even know who Shepard Fairey is, but they'll know, you know, what's going on. And then obviously, you know, Banksy, the way that he can take an idea that's political and create something that will, you know, change a point of view. Because if you can change a point of view, you know, as we've seen with Shepard Fairey, you can change a vote. And then hopefully, if, you know, potentially if you can change a vote, you could change the world. I mean,
well, I've always been, I've always appreciated just the power of art in terms of its communication. It's powerful as music, literature, you know, for a global audience, and just having, you know, and a global language that's universal, you know. And more than ever, I can imagine this lockdown period, this pandemic year, is going to have a massive impact on what artists will produce. But just talking about region, so you mentioned Rome. I love Italy. So is there a great energy there? I mean, do you exhibit there? I'm gathered that you do. Is it an annual thing?
Yeah, I did an exhibition in Rome in a gallery called Wunderkammern. I'm going to go to Sardinia in September. That's not really to do a show, that's actually just to have a holiday, but I want to soak up the area, because also what I find interesting about Sardinia is it's a blue zone. So it's one of the areas in the world where you have people who have lived over 100, and it's partly down to their diet, it's partly down to their lifestyle. So you've got, like, on the island of Okinawa in Japan, you have so many people that are living over the age of 100 because of their diet and their lifestyle.
Fascinating.
And in Sardinia, you got these, it's a very kind of quite a closed community. They spend a lot of time out on the mountains, you know, herding, but then they come back and they eat pecorino cheese. They drink a very nice Sardinian wine, which I had like a little glass of that tonight. So the secret for me of like living, you know, to be over 100 is I bought a case of this wine, and I'm slowly chipping through it. But I do get a lot of inspiration from Italy. I went there when I was a baby. My father was an artist as well, and he won a prize which allowed him to travel from the valleys of Wales to study in Rome. And he didn't tell them when he was actually going over there that he was actually bringing his wife and his like 1-year-old baby boy. But that was basically my sort of first memories are of living in Rome when I was 1-year-old in like 1969.
Wow.
My mum was actually, well, it was interesting because I recently did a lecture about forgers, like art forgers, who would, you know, be these guys who could make an incredible copy of, you know, a Michelangelo drawing or a this or a that. Turns out my mum and my dad knew one of these guys who was actually a forger who lived in Rome at the time. So they met him, which I didn't know. I was doing this lecture talking about this guy. Can't remember his name. But so these little coincidences are just, you know, there's something about Italy and there's something about Rome that I just find fascinating. I guess it's the culture and also the fact that what kind of ended the whole civilization of Rome and this, you know, the sort of the Roman sort of, you know, civilization was probably because the barbarians finally just kind of overwhelmed it. You know, we're kind of looking at, you know, sort of what's going on in America right now. It seems to be this sort of civilization, is it in decline? You know, is it sort of, I don't know what's going on over there, but there's some crazy stuff happening.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of Europe then, as I said, I've always appreciated Italy. I've been all over Italy. Would you say that, how would you compare Italy, say, to other parts of Europe in terms of its reaction to modern art or pop art? Would you say the energy's higher in Italy than anywhere else in Europe?
I think you've got this tradition, you know, you go into churches in Italy and every single church has a masterpiece, you know, it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
You know, it's culture. It's why people did the grand tour and they would go and visit Rome. And the architecture and everything is just so incredible. I absolutely love it. But then I'm also a Francophile. I love being able to just jump onto Eurostar back in the day when we could.
Right,
we had to go into quarantine. And, you know, sort of the fact that Paris survived World War II, it wasn't bombed, it wasn't destroyed. And, you know, I find that culture amazing as well.
Yeah.
So I think I have a theory about certain cities that it's you need the dirt to help things to grow. You know, places like Paris, places like Rome, places like New York, places like London, they're quite stressful cities, but then they create these great cultures. You know, you have great musical traditions, you have great artistic traditions, because the stressful cities are the ones where people will go, God, New York's really getting me down right now. I need to make a song about it. I need to get it out. You know, it's like I'm watching a documentary right now about Detroit and about, you know, Juan Atkins and Cybertron, and he's talking about how he started making music and the city was just in decline. You know, the industry, the Packard plant had closed down, all of this stuff had kind of collapsed, but you still have these people who want to kind of express what it feels like, you know, how they're feeling about it. And maybe the industrial, you know, sort of structure has collapsed, but they still, you know, they still want to make music. They still want to create. They still want to make art. They still want to speak.
Yeah. I want to touch a little bit on your maybe new direction or your new hopes for the future, given this time. I mean, it's really forced everybody to be a lot more reflective about the planet, about social awareness, sociology, racial issues, financial issues, everything, global issues in terms of the climate. So where do you sit with that? I mean, in terms of your art and your hopes for the future?
I think what jumped into my head just then was a party that I did with, you know, various artists in downtown Los Angeles. So you'd have, say, for example, Shepherd's DJing up there, Swoon's doing a sort of beauty parlor thing where everyone's coming in and we're doing their nails and we're doing their hair. And it's this precious thing that we've always taken for granted, which is human interaction, you know, and the beauty of like getting together with friends and creating a vibe, you know. And so for the last 3 months, we've had to sort of distance ourselves. And even like this week, we went to an antique fair on Tuesday, and it got a bit scary because everyone's kind of forgetting to social distance. And you have to kind of go, oh, actually, you know what? I'm not sure. Could this be the day? I know someone in an article that I was reading said they stepped out in Los Angeles and like a cyclist cycled past them and they kind of looked at each other like, did you have COVID-19? Did I totally get it? You know, you don't know. You're still quite afraid. But then you realize how precious and how dynamic it is to interact with other human beings and how amazing it is. You know, openings at the gallery where we would just have a whole bunch of people together. And, you know, you really realize how much we, you know, I joke about, I may almost be, you know, when you hear about like soldiers from Japan who never really realized that World War II finished, and they're still out in the jungle and they haven't kind of accepted the fact that the war is over. You know, will I not actually accept the fact that isolation is over and not be able to return to society anymore?
Yeah.
But I think when we do, it's going to feel really precious.
Yeah.
We won't take those things for granted.
Yeah.
Being able to, you know, have an exhibition in September, maybe be in Tokyo in October, maybe do a residency in New York in December. These are all things that we're not 100% sure we'll ever be able to go back to.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Going to a bar where everyone's wearing these like Perspex visors.
Yeah.
It's like the Jetsons. It's like how we thought the future was going to look, you know, back in the 1950s. This is how we thought the future is. And now we're in a pub and everyone's wearing these Perspex visors.
Yeah.
So
are you making visual notes as you go through this pandemic, or you know, is the way you work through more what they call happenstance? You just react maybe as you see things, or do you actually document things in terms of, okay, this is maybe going to have an influence in my work at this point?
I think it's influencing every single day.
Yeah.
You know, if you're seeing a phrase that someone's posted up, it may go on to a piece of artwork that I'm creating. You know, it's always the same thing. I'm kind of like, if I watch a documentary and it's talking about Keith Haring and about, you know, when he caught AIDS, I'm thinking about what it must have been like in New York at that time.
Yeah.
When you weren't really supposed to talk about it. You know, you were dying from it, but you couldn't really tell people, and all of this stuff that's happening. Or if you're reading about, you know, the pandemic and certain phrases and things that are happening, like yesterday, you know, the president of Brazil, you know, got COVID-19, you know, so all of these things that are kind of happening every single day, I'm kind of adding to my artwork. If I'm hand finishing, I'm adding phrases, and it's kind of affecting, you know, that. And it's constant, you know, it's never like I'm going to write it all down because I may use it in a couple of months.
Right.
Like if I hear something and it's in my head, it goes on to the artwork straight away. You know, I'm kind of adding to stuff, you know. If I have an image of, you know, Statue of Liberty, something's happening, then I'm kind of, you know, adding that to the artwork.
Yeah. Give us a music note. What are you listening to music at the moment? I mean, the last time I spoke to you, we definitely had an appreciation for music, and most lovers of art do. So what's interesting for you musically right now?
Well, like I said, I'm watching the documentary about Detroit and about techno and like sort of the minimal basics of it, because I produce music. I've released, I basically released an album that hold on, let me turn that off. I released an album that I made in something like 1996.
That was a good link there, musical link.
Yeah, exactly. And then also there's a guy called Jason Molina, Songs Ohio. And I didn't realize, I had, going through old compact discs, I found a track of his that I loved.
Yeah.
And then as you kind of go down the wormhole, and then you find out more about, you know, sort of albums that he's produced. And then sort of start researching that and finding out more about that. So, it's a little bit of Detroit. It's a little bit of kind of American sort of country music. It's all these kind of influences all mashing together.
Yeah. Just before we close, I mean, through all the different platforms they've got, there is Fresh Eye Magazine. I'll be forwarding people to your website, etc. So what do you want to plug right now? Anything to plug in terms of upcoming exhibitions or anything that's happening that's interesting in the gallery? Anything you want to highlight?
The next sort of thing on the horizon is, which if it does happen will be really cool, is going to be, I'm going to do my first exhibition in Japan, hopefully in October.
Awesome.
If it happens.
Wow, that's big.
No, it may be, because Yeah, I've been to Japan twice. When I used to do streetwear in California, we had a clothing line called Anapi Adjustment.
On my
And
bucket.
we went to Japan. We went to Shinjuku. And we opened up a shop. So I have fond memories of being in Japan, in Tokyo in the 90s, and so to take what I'm now doing to Japan and do an exhibition is pretty excellent.
Wow.
So that's something that I'm working on. I just basically found an industrial warehouse that I'm taking on that's something like 20,000 feet square that I'm going to use for painting. So I want to be able to kind of scale up and start doing some big canvases.
Nice.
I basically wanted to have a bat cave, and now I have a bat cave. So I'm going to move into the bat cave and start making artwork.
Wow.
So rather than
that's topical because I'm a Batman fan.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, everyone needs a bat cave. It's a local bat cave, so I can kind of have it near where I live. I can drive the Batmobile inside, and then I can kind of start to do stuff. So yes, the Japan thing's cool. There may be a residency in New York happening in December, and then there's a bat cave going on. So, and who knows? I'm easing back slowly into reopening the gallery. Right now, it's by appointment only because people have been staying at home. They've been going online, and they've been buying a lot of art online. So, as far as the business goes, the business has continued. It's been going, good. We've learned a lot of things from having to sort of restructure, but I've always been quite, sort of, if I'm making artwork, I'm putting it in the gallery, but I'm also putting it online. And that's been, sort of a lot of fun to do.
It's fantastic to hear that there's been that fruitfulness in the business and how you've evolved.
Yeah, and I've got the strip club as well. The money's, I hope we're going to get some customers soon.
Yes, just before opening. Yeah.
Yeah, everything's looking nice and shiny. I hope we get some customers soon.
Charlie, it's been fantastic to talk to you. This is, as I said, you've christened the new expanding content that I'm putting out under the Fresh Eye brand. It's been absolutely fantastic to talk to you. So wish you all the best in the future. We'll be doing this again, no doubt. Just the constant evolution of you and your arts. Yeah. And just wish you well when we come out the other side. I mean, I've been saying this to a lot of people. A year from now, we'll all be looking back at this year and be like, what was that? What was that about? Yeah. The craziest time ever. But thank you so much. And salute, as they say. I like that. Yeah.
Salute, man.
We're in shop there. Good.
Thank you.
Cheers.